Welcome back to Geek Channel 8. I'm Eric.
And I'm Johanna.
And I'm Rosie.
This week, we are talking about the last Dracula film at the time of this recording that has been made, and that was Renfield from 2023.
I had the opportunity to meet one of my all-time heroes recently, George Takei, who came to Dartmouth for a series of events related to AAPI Heritage Month, but we were able to present him with the Dartmouth Film Award and put together a little tribute reel of his best work. And I got to spend a couple days with him, and it was awesome. Like, he is, you know, in his 80s now, but sharp as a tack and really funny. And it was also interesting having him here. The night he arrived was the night that the 90 or so people were arrested for the encampments on the green here at Dartmouth, the student protest, which you may have caught a little bit of if you're a John Oliver fan and watched Last Week Tonight. It was covered on that show. So it was a big night, but it was interesting having George here to comment on it.
Let me contextualize that because the people might be listening to this 3 years from now. These are protests over the Palestinian crisis right now, the war in Gaza.
Yeah. So it was interesting having George Takei's perspective because he has been so politically active his whole life and has kind of seen it all. And he definitely, was in support of what the students were doing, being politically active, but he also sort of had a sense of, that some of the students were maybe just trying to one up Columbia and not really thinking about the best way to make their voices heard. So it was interesting hearing his perspective as a veteran on all this.
I got nothing. When it comes to you just told the story and now I got to tell what I've been up to.
You did some gardening, Eric?
I went to Trader Joe's.
Really? That's exciting.
I have been listening to podcasts as usual, which I do when I'm not big on the show, and I'm kind of hooked on Gastropod right now. Gastropod is a portmanteau of gastronomic and podcast, and it's all about interesting stories about food. Like the last one I listened to, they were talking about fast food jingles.
Oh, that's fun.
So that's kind of cool. I've also been watching The Jinx 2 on HBO Max, which is the Robert Durst trial. The first Jinx, for those who don't know, was about this billionaire Robert Durst and the people around him who mysteriously die. And the second one is about his trial for his murder trial.
This is the one that Jeremy Irons was in the film version of this, right?
Yes, and that film version was referenced in the trial itself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. Rosie, how about you?
Actually, we've been gearing up for my 50th birthday. And as part of that,
Happy birthday.
thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Yeah. I can't believe it. It's crazy. I don't feel like I'm 50.
How are you older than me?
Yeah. I'm older than you. We'll go with that. I don't feel like I'm 50, but the NFL, they just released their schedule, and we decided to go ahead and get Bengals Eagles tickets for when the Eagles come to Cincinnati. And my partner Rob, his birthday is 4 days before mine. So funny little story about us. Okay. He was born a year after me. But his birthday is on June 4th and mine is on June 5th. Or June 8th. So from June 4th to June 7th, we're the same age, right? And then on June 8th, I go back to being a cougar again. So, but I've never been to an NFL game. So happy birthday to us.
Woo.
Wow. Cool. Aren't you guys due for a new sports stadium by now?
I know, right? I don't know if our city can afford it.
All right. We're not going to go there because that rabbit hole will We'll talk about that when we do the whole 9
Yeah.
yards.
Yeah, don't get
Okay.
me started on what I used to call Paycor Stadium when it was being built and I was in radio. Mm-mm.
Let's jump into today's thing.
Mr. Renfield, welcome. I am Dracula. You will make a very good assistant.
No! He's evil. We will protect you!
You have the word of the most trusted institution on earth, the Catholic Church.
Renfield, your sole purpose in life is to serve me. Now, let's eat.
I just want a normal life again.
God bless you, Mr. Renfield.
Oh, God bless you, nuns.
You're a hero. Robert Montague Renfield. Let me explain. I work for Dracula.
Count Dracula?
It's the real Dracula!
Some call me the Dark One, others the Lord of Death.
So you bring him people to eat?
Well, I do other stuff.
Like what? Wash his cape?
No, the cape is dry clean only, strictly.
Yeah, I will wear this fly, yeah.
I'm gonna think he's such a bad guy. But you're never really gonna be free until you face him.
I will no longer tolerate abuse. I deserve happiness.
Let me explain something to you, okay? You deserve only suffering. I will unleash an army of death. Everyone you care about will suffer because you betrayed me.
We have to stop him before sunset.
I am enough. I deserve happiness, and I take full charge of my life today.
You know when something crazy happens and someone's like, it's okay, I've seen way worse. Everything I saw you do today is gonna be my way worse.
It's my least favorite part of the job.
Let's just talk about how Renfield came to be, because I'm really curious about the backstory to this one, because this is not what I would expect from Universal with their Dracula property.
Yeah. The impetus to make this film was partially because of relaunching the Universal Monster series. Some of the films in that series have been really successful, like The Invisible Man with Elizabeth Moss. And so there have been some really great things to come out of this reboot. But some of the other chapters, like Dracula Untold, which we mentioned in a previous episode, have been less successful. So they thought that maybe it's time to do a comedy. And the mockumentary What We Do in the Shadows, made by Taika Waititi, sort of pointed in this direction of, okay, there is maybe some more untapped potential for the Dracula story, but in a comedic direction. So they decided to go for it, and the director, Chris McKay, knew from the get-go that he wanted Nicholas Hoult to play Renfield. And no one had made a film from Renfield's point of view before. He's sort of an overlooked character, but, you know, an iconic one. So ripe to be the center character in this. And I was surprised to hear that they actually considered other actors before settling on Nick Cage to play Count Dracula.
Did they not see Vampires Kiss?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like a natural, but yeah, they had actually thought about other actors, but one of the names that kept coming up apparently was Regé-Jean Page from Bridgerton, I think. So, you know, and that would have been a very different direction to go in. Like emotionally abusive in a completely different way is how I would picture it.
If I had to cast this, I was picturing the Hot Fuzz guys, Shaun of the Dead.
Oh yeah, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost.
Pegg and Frost, yeah.
Pegg and Frost.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now I want to see that. That would be so great.
See, I should be a casting director. Anyway, good, continue.
Anyway, so Chris McKay said that for the over-the-top feeling, which I think, and we'll talk a little bit about Nick Cage's performance in a second, that he was inspired by Sam Raimi, hence the Buckets and Buckets of Blood. And he said also Peter Jackson's early movies. So I just want to put in there for folks, there might be a hint of Meet the Feebles in this film. Like, just a hint.
Oh God, help us all.
Even more so, Bad Taste. So if you've never seen Bad Taste, there you go. Chef's Kiss. That is classic B movie Peter Jackson, and that did remind me a little of this, and also Brain Dead.
Yeah, so think about it drawing from those inspirations more than John Wick, even though, similar levels of violence. But back to the real reason why I think most people wanted to check out Renfield in the first place, which is Nicolas Cage as Dracula. Oh my gosh. Like, you have to see it. Like, if you're a Dracula fan, this is a must. Nick Cage, of course, being a Coppola himself, is a fan of Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, loves the romanticism in that, and, the sense of love and exile. But his Dracula, the Dracula that he draws the most inspiration from, is the Christopher Lee Hammer Dracula. So keep that in mind. But what he says is, for the voice of Dracula, he imagined Christopher Lee with a little bit of Anne Bancroft as Mrs. Robinson thrown in, which...
What the...
I know. Like, I realize that I don't read nearly enough about Nick Cage's thoughts about his own performances, because they are so inspired. You also have to wonder whether it's Nick Cage who maybe is responsible for this film being set in New Orleans. Cage, says that there's an X factor in New Orleans, and it's something that's hard to articulate, but it's a feeling you get.
Doesn't he have a house there?
I wouldn't be surprised.
He has a plot. Like, he's got his little, like, pyramid shaped mausoleum all set up for when it's his time.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He's such a weirdo. I love it.
Yeah. So anyway, he was a fan of this being set in New Orleans, and in the interviews, actually, what's really great is he talks a lot about seeing himself as the supporting character in this film, and really trying to approach this from the point of view of, it's Nicholas Holt's film, and he is meant to bolster that character and that performance. We can talk about whether he succeeds at being a supporting actor in this film or not. But that was his approach.
You're holding raw meat out, because it's like, I want to talk about this, but this is way too early for us to get into that. Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, other cool casting. Awkwafina shows up in this film as sort of a Mina Murray character, sort of a Van Helsing character, like kind of plays an interesting role in the film, but in some ways is pretty inspired casting, and she hasn't had a chance to do a lot of action films. She is in Shang-Li and the Ten Rings, but doing a little bit more action here. And what was kind of special about the action sequences, most of the effects in this film are practical effects, which, it's fine to tell you that, but once you've seen it, you're going to be like, wait, what? How? But there is a lot of squibs and fake blood exploding and going off, and, they surf on a body while they're falling through a motel atrium, and that all these things are real effects. So the film is definitely worth seeing just for that aspect of it, because the effects are really well done. The action scenes are well choreographed, but it's impressive given the amount of blood that's in the film that they chose to do mostly practical effects for this.
It's too early still for me to comment on Cage's performance.
I mean, we can at least start talking about it with the opening sequences of this film that are the shot-for-shot remake of the 1930s Dracula. Can we at least start there with how awesome that was?
That was awesome. It was exactly. Now, I mean, it's Universal, and so I'm sure they, they screened every single frame of that and had it standing by to do it. But yes, it's totally flashback. So there's not a lot of dialogue. I don't remember if it's silent or not.
Completely silent, because he does say, I
never drink
wine.
I never drink. Why?
Okay, now you guys brought it up, and now we got to go there. The drink for this episode is Aquafina. Okay, get your bottle, and now we're back. No, I'm kidding. I would not do that to you. I would not do that to you guys, because I have said this before. I will say it again. Aquafina is good in small doses. Drink responsibly. I don't think she is great for a main character role. I liked her better in Ocean's 8 or something like that, where she's better as part of an ensemble. She can't carry a film. Although, to be fair, she was not the main protagonist. She wasn't Renfield or Dracula, so she was the next biggest character. But I think that was still a little too much Aquafina for me. But so instead,
no way. I want to see her in a feature film. I think she's hilarious, and I want to go have drinks with her.
Well, no, don't get me wrong. I would love to have drinks with Aquafina, maybe even Aquafina with Aquafina, which would be awesome. But
I want to see her. I want to see her drunk. I want to see her.
How would you tell the difference?
Oh, because she would be. Because I bet you she's just like me, a Claremont County woman. The more you drink, the louder you get. Cheers to you, girl. I'm here for it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so Eric, what are we drinking?
So the actual drink that we are doing here, this is from a woman named Tracy's blog called The Kitchen Is My Playground. And it is Dracula's Blood Cocktail. Okay. We're going to actually drink Dracula's blood here. And it is a cocktail made with 2 ounces of white rum, 3/4 ounce of peach schnapps, 3 ounces of black cherry juice. And she does stress black cherry juice. So you want as much for the color as it is for the flavor. They use R.W. Knudsen just black cherry, 2 teaspoons of grenadine, and then fresh cherries, maraschino cherries or whatever. And they float some plastic vampire teeth in the glass, but I would skip that part. Anyway, the great thing about this cocktail is there are a lot of drinks that are blood themed and they don't look anything like blood. This looks like blood. So it is a great drink for Halloween or whatever. Again, her website is thekitchenismyplayground.com, and it's called Dracula's Blood Cocktail. There you go. That is my recommendation for this. And we will talk about why we would be drinking Dracula's blood later.
So after the flashback sequence, the shot-for-shot callback to the 1930s Dracula, we learn why they're now in a new city. I actually like this approach to, if Dracula is still alive in 2023, how has this been working? What's the story there? And I like Renfield's explanation of Dracula, each city they go to, he starts off weak and defeated and slowly comes to full power and then has this all out, bloodbath and gets caught. The vampire hunters go after them and then they have to leave for a new city and start the cycle all over again. And this to me made sense in terms of explaining why we were in New Orleans in 2023 in a way that Dracula 2000 did not have a satisfying explanation for that, in my opinion. And it really felt like it was honest to the film's approach of, this is a story about an abusive, dysfunctional relationship between two people, and those sorts of relationships have cycles. So I felt like it was a good setup for when we get to see Renfield at the support group meeting.
Yeah, so he goes to this support group meeting, and you kind of get, I at least was like, okay, this is a Pinkman thing. This is like a Breaking Bad Jesse Pinkman thing. He's there with an ulterior motive to prey upon this group, but he really does seem to have codependency issues with Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have to say, Rosie.
Yes.
There's a scene in this early thing where they're talking about their partners and sharing to the group. And I know that this is like the fourth or fifth major issue of things with this guy, but he's really into ska. Ska? Fishbone, mustard plug, voodoo glow skulls, and I'm just like, oh, they are going there.
They really went there, all the way there.
They threw down the gauntlet, as I am, of course, a big fan of Fishbone. I've seen 2/3 of those bands. I think I was at a Mustard Plug show that you were at.
Yep, yeah.
At
we saw
Sudsy's.
Mustard Plug, I think, over at Sudsy's.
Sudsy's,
if I remember correctly. Yeah, we saw them there.
Oh no, they are gonna go there. So yeah,
and they so went there,
down, and it's gonna come back later.
Yeah, they're like, oh, Ska's not dead.
Okay, New Orleans seems to have changed a lot since Dracula 2000.
Okay, so what I would say is, other than like they mention Cafe du Monde at some point in the third act, this could have been set anywhere. It was the most generic, disappointing use of New Orleans I've ever seen on screen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were supposedly at Cafe du Monde. They met at Cafe du Monde, but it did not look like Cafe du Monde.
It's not Cafe du Monde. It's maybe like a pop-up tent that has Cafe du Monde mugs, but that is not where Cafe du Monde is.
That was not, yeah, no, I was like, that's not Cafe du Monde, so that kind of, I would say that it is equivalent to Dracula 2000 in its non-use of the actual New Orleans ball being set there. It's like they did a little bit of B-roll just like Dracula 2000, but most of it was not actually. It was like sound stages and stuff.
Yeah,
anyway.
Dracula 2000 at least had a fight in the cemetery, like that really felt like you actually went there, and they had, like a big party out, in the French Quarter that really felt like you were there.
And there was the swamp scene too, which
the swamp scene. Inexplicable why it was set in New Orleans, but like actually good use of the city. It was, I was kind of surprised. Like, why bother setting it in New Orleans if you're not going to film anything?
Right.
Let's continue. So he's in this 12-step program for codependent relationships, and then suddenly these criminals show up.
So these other lower criminals that were the abusive boyfriends of his buddies in the group. He goes to kill those dirtbags, but then is surprised by an actual assassin hired by the Lobo crime family. And that's when we get to see Renfield step it up a notch. Like, it was one thing to see him kind of intimidating these mean boyfriends, but then to see him like kick serious ass and like behead this absolute behemoth like guy that was sent to kill the others.
Yeah. And the way he kicked his head across the street and it landed on the car. That was an awesome scene.
I think that this is like a comedy that like they're trying to appeal to a broad male demographic and a broad female demographic, and it's like the 12-step program comedy bit of it is more for the ladies in the audience, and it's more of a gay male relationship, so maybe the gay population too, and then there's this out of nowhere, it goes from like this standard comedy to like
Shaun of the Dead level comedy.
It's slapstick kung fu film.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, and we also find out that Renfield's plan here all along was that, if he's got to feed people to Dracula anyway, why not feed these horrible, awful, abusive boyfriends to Dracula, which is actually kind of brilliant.
Dracula kind of caught on to that and started complaining about the kind of food he was getting. And he's like, I want a table full of nuns. I want a busload of cheerleaders. And then Renfield shows up to a bar that has a table full of nuns and a busload of cheerleaders drives by it. He's like, no.
Yeah, I think that's where the film succeeds the most is in the moments where it is letting the audience in on the joke or is being self-aware in that way. Those moments actually worked pretty well. And like there's one much later on where there's a welcome mat that like literally says like, welcome, come on in.
And he's like, oh shit.
Oh shit. Yeah, like it's like a perfect joke just for the audience, for people who know vampire lore. Like, and there are some good moments like that.
Although, wasn't that Renfield's own welcome mat?
Yes.
Like, and I'm like, he of all people should know, you know? A couple of things with the cops were great too, by the way, because of the first scene where we see the police station and Aquafina and all that. There's this sign. There's this big sign, which is just hilarious if you know New Orleans' reputation with the police. They've got this big sign that says, "Don't solve the crime until overtime."
That's great.
And then, of course, there's when they show up to the crime family thugs place, you know, there's like, it's spray painted with ska stuff. Like there's "Stop Your Messing Around."
Yeah, they quote the Specials.
They quote the Specials, yeah. Actually, which is I think a Prince Buster song that the Specials redid. But yeah, it's "Message to You, Rude Boy." And the cop is just like, "Ska's not dead." Fuck. And that's not the only time they come back to ska 2 or 3 more times. So like they're really out to get ska anyway, which is weird because it's New Orleans. You'd think it would be jazz or something else, you know, but you know.
Nope, we're focusing on ska this film. They're trying to bring it back again.
I just thought that maybe there was supposed to be some retro 90s vibe going on with this thing, which certainly fits with Nick Cage.
Mm-hmm. And ska.
So are we going to talk about Rebecca and Kate, the two sisters, Aquafina, and who played Kate?
Kate was played by Camille Chen.
What's she been in? She's so familiar.
Kate, Hallows End,
No.
Game Night, Lost Universe, Devil Lady, The New Guy,
on
the Sunset Strip,
Miss Congeniality. That must be what you're remembering her from, Eric.
Hey, I love Miss Congeniality.
So yeah, I really wanted there to be like a Mina and Lucy thing, but it just never materialized. It seemed like maybe in an earlier version of the script they were going to do something there, and then it sort of evolved. And Aquafina's character's name is Quincy, so then it's sort of like, you know, it seems like her character is meant to be a combination of other Dracula supporting characters, like. She's sort of Quincy, like as like the American, you know, gun-toting, you know, person, but then also sort of a Van Helsing character because she's kind of playing this detective role. And then also sort of Mina because she's like part love interest for Renfield, which is sort of something in the books or other movies where like, you know, he at least feels some sort of protective impulse towards her.
Yeah. I like the scene when Renfield shows up to the police station and he has all of those flowers and she's like, "Did you get those for me?" And he's all embarrassed. He's like, they're for everybody." And he starts like
he hands just like one flower to somebody else.
He has like one flower to the closest officer standing next to him. And that was it.
It's got like isolated funny moments. Like I don't know if it necessarily works as a film, but and some of these were used in the trailer, unfortunately, so you sort of knew they were coming. But one of the scenes with the support group where he's, you know, the guy's like, "Well, what would happen if you stopped serving Dracula?" And he's like, "He wouldn't grow to full power." And the group leader says, like, "That's so weird. Why would you phrase it like that?" Like, Like they're
But that's so true. It's like
It's so true, but why would you phrase it like that? Yes.
it's I mean, they're just like isolated moments that it's like, that's really funny, like really well done.
well, so he tries to get Rebecca one time with the flowers, but there's another time after they have the falling out where he brings cookies and she's just like, I don't want your murder cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't even discussed the support group murder. You knew it was going to happen because here's Renfield. He's decided to become more independent and less codependent, and so he decides to stop doing Dracula's bidding, and in retaliation, Dracula decides to just murder the support group.
We've already seen these fight scenes, which are ridiculously over the top.
Oh, yeah.
But on point. The fight choreography is on point in this movie. Mm-hmm. But he shows up as like Pimp Dracula or something.
Yes. One of the things that I think is kind of fun about this film is that everything does feed into this narrative of Dracula being an abusive partner.
Yes.
To Renfield. And it's done in this, vampire universe, but like you could picture in an abusive relationship that something that your partner might do is like try to sabotage your relationship with your friends or, remove your support networks. And Dracula does it by killing them all, like with tons of blood. This is also, there's so much spilled and wasted blood in this film compared to other Draculas. Like in others, like there's not a lot of, like Dracula drinks most of the blood that's spilled, but this is one of the ones, like he's a pretty sloppy Dracula.
Yeah, this is where it's really channeling early Peter Jackson. The amount of carnage that goes on in New Orleans, and it's not just Dracula too, it's also the Lobo family. Like they just shoot up everything. I'm like, this but it is a comedy. So,
right. I will say that the subplot with the Lobo crime family felt a little like I just didn't care until it got to the end when Danny Lobo is sort of served up as like a competitor to Renfield. I feel like they didn't do as much with it as they could have with, like at that point in the story when Danny Lobo takes Renfield's place, more or less, Renfield is already kind of over it. It would have been more interesting if it had happened at a time when Renfield was still kind of ambivalent about leaving Dracula. But it happened at a time when instead Renfield was like, oh no, you poor SOB. Like I kind of want to rescue you from this. Like didn't. So good idea, but didn't really quite work.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ideas in this. We haven't even mentioned the fact that like Renfield has superpowers too, and the way he gets them is by eating bugs, and so he has to like have bugs handy so that he can charge up his superpowers.
I like that idea actually. I thought that was cute.
Yeah, no, I said that was cute. Kind of there are a lot of good ideas in this.
Yeah.
One of the other plot threads that's happening is that Dracula is thinking about taking over the world, which simultaneously felt like really original. Like it's the first time that really felt like, oh, Dracula has a plan beyond like kill Lucy, kill Mina. Like, like even in the novel, it's sort of unclear what his ultimate end game is. And it was nice to actually feel like, oh, Dracula's making a plan. And I love the moment with the sticky note where it's like Dracula and Renfield.
Yeah.
It is a superhero film, and he is the supervillain. In fact, that was very much like that first Superman film where Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor, and it's like Luthorville, and stuff like, or whatever. And his sidekick, I forget what his name is, like, writes his own name in on the map of the newly drawn California,
Yeah.
It is definitely a superhero film. They do super heroic things, and Dracula's like a supervillain or a Dr. Evil from like the Austin Powers. It's very much channeling that kind of a vibe.
And then you have the evil crime family, the Lobos, and Bella Francesca Lobos, played by Shura Agdashlu. She's fabulous. I love
She
that
is.
actress. Every time I see her, she just exudes fabulousness, and I just love any character she plays because I know that they're just going to be amazing.
Okay, so I think this is a better film than Last Voyage of the Demeter, but not by a ton. I think they
Right.
both suffer from the same problem, which is they have a really good premise. They both have a really good premise. Then in Last Voyage of the Demeter, it's the like, let's just deal with this sea voyage of Dracula, and this is like Renfield is in a codependent relationship with Dracula, and they keep revisiting it. Neither of these two films fully pays off. Like they've got that, but they're not there. This is a more fun film for sure because it's not maudlin like the other. If you liked Kick-Ass, like this has that Kick-Ass vibe. It's like I said, it's a superhero film with a lot of martial arts and a lot of over the top action. Like I said, the fight choreography is on point. They had a lot of good ideas that they didn't fully develop. And again, I would have liked to have seen New Orleans take a more central role in this. And I think that Awkwafina is great, but this is too big a role for her. She needs to be not the center of attention that much. She needs to be there to deliver the punchy lines. And so that's kind of where I was. I may have some more thoughts after you guys tell me what you thought, but that's where I'm at.
So I didn't think Awkwafina was the weak link in this film. I actually thought it was Nick Cage. And I love seeing Nick Cage be over the top and eat scenery, but he was not up to his usual best in this film. Like the accent that he came up with was too ridiculous, to the point that you didn't feel like it was even Nick Cage, like being Nick Cage doing this. He was Nick Cage trying to be something else and eating the scenery. And it just didn't work for me. Like, I really wanted to like him in this film, and I felt like he missed it. And it's sad because like so many of his recent films have actually been just like unbelievably good. Dream Scenario, that he was also in like within the next year, one of his best performances, and doing serious acting, like in a film that is also like comic and over the top and action heavy and weird. And he's so incredible in Dream Scenario. And then in this, like, it's like he had too much fun and forgot to act. I don't know what happened, but I was so sad.
So this is, for me, I want to address that. This for me is like a flashback to classic Nick Cage. I'm thinking like Snake Eyes and 8mm and like Face Off and those movies where he's supposed to be playing a serious action role and you can't take him seriously. The problem is, I like to contrast this with Wicker Man. Really classic horror property, and then they decided to cast Nick Cage in it, and he brings the camp to something that's not supposed to be campy at all and kind of ruins it. This is a classic horror property, Dracula, but they're going in with the idea that it's going to be camp, and they cast Nick Cage for that reason. I don't think Cage was cast to act in this. I think Cage was cast to be Cage,
Yeah.
I guess maybe it's just the accent. Like I think whatever he did, his cocktail of Christopher Lee mixed with Anne Bancroft, it just like, I don't know, it took me out of it a lot of the times right when I wanted to be really in it.
I disagree with you on this because he's one of the better parts of this, in my opinion. It's like this is the Paul Rubens from Buffy the Vampire Slayer vampire that I wanted to see. Like, so it's like if Paul Rubens was able to be in this, it'd probably be even better. But this is I think Cage is as close as you can get,
Yeah. I love all of the campiness that comes with Nicolas Cage in every movie that he does. I mean, all the way back to what, Air Force One.
No, Con Air. You're thinking of Con Air.
Con Air. Yeah, all
yeah.
the way back to Con Air when he's like getting out of the plane and hair flowing in the wind, and he's just being as Nicolas Cage as it gets. I love him doing comedy so much. I feel like he really did bring a lot to this film. The actor that played Renfield did a great job playing that kind of classic, polite British guy that's kind of understated, that when he needs to, he can totally kick ass. And I love Aquafina. She cracks me up. Well, again, I want to go have drinks with her and get loud. She's just awesome. So this film gave me a lot of the Shaun of the Dead kind of vibes watching it. So the campiness, the jokes, the things like that, I felt like it all was supposed to go together that way. And I thoroughly enjoyed that film. It made me laugh a lot, and I needed that this week. So I'm definitely giving it a thumbs up.
Okay, well, I give it a thumbs up, but much like with Last Voyage of Demeter, it's not like, this is not the first choice. Like, if you're going through stuff and it's like, what do I watch? This is not the first choice, but it's still worth seeing. Johanna, you agree? Thumbs up?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay, well, there we go. That is our opinion about Renfield from 2023. And that brings to a close our Dracula arc, but we will have more stuff for you in the future. If you would like to tell us your opinion of this film, which is very polarizing, again, critical disaster, I think it was. And it was also probably, did it bomb at the box office?
Yeah, I mean, I think because it was a critical failure. It also came out at a weird time. It came out in like early April. So, it was not a summer blockbuster either.
Yeah. I'd love to hear what you guys think. gc8podcast@gmail.com if you want to write us there. We also have a Facebook group, but you basically gotta, it's a closed Facebook group. So just, join and we'll approve you. That's because Facebook is totally weird and won't let us make it like an open group for some reason. Anyway, until next time, this is Eric.
This is Rosie.
This is Johanna.
Signing off.
Yeah, you doing some gardening, Eric?
I went to Trader Joe's.
Hey, that's exciting.